rolling on 2.
Okay. Let's just give it. What time are we at on that? Maybe if we just
18, 19.
I'll get going at
20.
30.
Okay. Rolling to record on this one. Get some very interesting angles on there.
Okay, so
30.
we're good to go, aren't we?
Go.
Okay, Bill.
Okay.
Why do you think Gimpo does the M25 spin?
Why Gimpo does the M25 spin? I remember when he first talked to me about it, it seemed like perfect. It made perfect sense. It didn't need explaining. I was thinking, oh, of course, that's an obvious thing that has to be done. At the time, I don't know. I thought it was maybe just going to be a one-off. Obviously, Gimpo's into driving. He's into driving. That thing when you get into driving, it's actually for no reason. It's not about getting from A to B. It's just one can get into the process of driving, which I know I can when I'm driving this Land Rover. But that doesn't really explain why. It's kind of, but it is undefinable. Even though I know, I wouldn't know the words to use to say.
So, I mean, from my point of view, as an outsider to the situation, which is what I am.
Yeah.
Maybe there is just this kind of inherent instinctual thing going on with Gimpo, that his life obviously took a certain turn when he became involved with you and Jimmy, and so, as you've just said, yeah, maybe it's very difficult to sort of fully understand why Gimpo's doing the M25 spin, but maybe one way to sum it up is that, yeah, because of his involvement with you and what he's seen you two get up to and stuff, this has kind of swayed him to do it. That's one way he summed it up to me. He's like, my mates became artists and stuff like that, so what else was I meant to do? Because he'd spent time around you being musicians and what have you, and then has moved into one part of the art world.
That's one way of looking at it, but a lot of great art doesn't need explained, can't be explained, unless it wouldn't be what it is, unless it would be a written piece or it would be work in a different way. You just hear about something or see it, and you recognise that captures something, and there's no point in trying to deconstruct it. It doesn't get you anywhere. There's nothing really to deconstruct there, because it is what it is. But to go back to what you're saying about the influence that maybe Jimmy, Corty and myself had on Gimpo, yeah, I guess if he'd never ended up working with us, he may have not have done the M25 thing. But I know, I ended up going to art school at the age of 17 from a complete fluke. And if that fluke thing didn't happen and I ended up in art school, I'd have never ended up doing any of the things I did. I'd be a ship's engineer, or down the steelworks, doing an apprenticeship.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously, yeah, that kind of sums up one way of one reason why he's done it. And so, I mean, do you think yeah, it is quite a significant piece, the M25 spin. It's basically, is it, maybe you can just sum it up, it's a great simple conceptual art idea, is that, I mean, I think it's got a nice feel to it. It's very simple, isn't it, in some ways?
It's very simple. Nice isn't the word I'd use to describe it. That isn't a criticism of your choice of adjectives, but the idea of a road that doesn't go anywhere. I know he makes a statement to see where it goes, or he did at the beginning, that, and he was just coming up with a sort of flippant. But I guess that the idea of a road that doesn't go, it doesn't matter how far you travel, how far you drive, you don't get anywhere in it, and you're just going round and round. And I guess we've all been drawn to that in different ways at different times. And the M25 was the first major circular motorway that we had in the UK, and maybe other cities. Yeah, does Paris have them? Probably Paris. Probably other big.
Yeah, there's a
probably
periphery, but
yeah, probably other major cities have got them. But it was the first one in the UK, and I remember bit by bit, and I must have known Gimpo at the time, as it was being finalised, you know, and I couldn't wait for the whole thing to be a complete M25. So once it was done, I wasn't surprised at all that Gimpo or somebody chose to do what Gimpo's done. And if it wasn't Gimpo, it probably would have been somebody else to do it. Now, as a work of art, I can't, you know, I am drawn to it. I think it's great, but I couldn't argue the case to other people why it's a great work of art, or if any sort of art establishment would ever validate it as a work of art. There's no reason for the contemporary art establishment to validate it.
why not?
Because the contemporary art establishment seems to have certain criteria, certain rules, and that can change, you know. Your film here may come out at the end of, I only learnt from you this morning, or I'd forgotten that actually he's doing this over a limited period of time, and maybe at the end it will be presented via your film and will be applauded and validated as a major piece of our times. But it's not the sort of thing that the vast amount of people within contemporary, or those that validate it, would really go for. I don't think, or not right now.
No, and I mean, one thing is, it may be, as you've just said, kind of not necessarily hard to understand what it is, but it can't be finally presented because it's still a work in progress. So all that anyone can do, people like you and I, or as you said, the established contemporary art world, can only talk about it as a work in progress, which is, you know, as we know, is like somebody, it's like commenting on an artist as they're painting, saying, well, yeah, maybe in 2 days' time when he's put a bit more blue down there, it will, I can see where he's going with that, or she's going with that. And that's the territory we're in with Gimpo, isn't it? That it's still a work in progress.
Yeah, but it doesn't have any of the things that it doesn't shock. It's not sexy. It doesn't have those things that grab media's attention. Now, I think it is a very simple work of art to understand if you're the type of person to get it. Obviously, you are, I am, and there'll be other people out there that do. And for those that don't get it, will never get it. Now, what can change, once it becomes, as you said, once it's a finished piece and it becomes part of history, people can look back at it and it can enter into history, and then it can grow in its status as a thing that was done. But it could easily just grow into, have a status like, what a mindless folly that was. And you can't really control how that's going to play out.
No. And I mean, do you think it's kind of, you know, when you're explaining it to somebody, it maybe is slightly helpful, or it just describes, the piece has got 3 parts to it, hasn't it, in some ways? There's the website part of it, which has stills from the spin each year as it has taken place. And there's the video footage from the camera from the front of the van, and then there's the performance in the driving round the M25. So if you kind of like the piece, maybe one of the things you like about it is that it's got those 3 separate key elements. Those 3 elements make up the complete artwork that is the M25 spin. And then there are these offshoot things, Bill, that maybe to start with, you kind of announced the work, so you maybe gave it a little bit of validation from your perspective, and your, you know, Gimpo, or one way I see it, Gimpo, yourself and Ian Sinclair are part of a group who've created works inspired by the M25. So that gave it some trajectory, and now Gimpo is just well and truly headlong into the work, and still got a hell of a job to do, basically.
Absolutely. But I guess I agree with all those points you're making there. And I guess the other thing, because it's done over, as I've learned from you this morning, 25 years, and I didn't know there was a fixed thing on it. The watching somebody age, watching somebody over a 25-year period, Gimpo at the beginning and Gimpo at the end, it's going to be two completely different. You're going to see a young man at the end, and you're going to see a man in his late middle age at the end. At the beginning, you see a young man, and you see a man in his late middle age. At the end, I guess, approaching his late middle age.
Yeah, and that's something that he said to me this year. That basically, when he started the spin, he was, as you say, a younger man, and also was a single man. And so this year, he was kind of having the slight angst about justifying of the work that it costs about whatever £1,000 a year to put together. But he, as I said to him as well, as I've just said to you, he's well and truly into the work now, and there's that simple thing of it's very good to finish what you start, and even though there's 10 more years to go, it's so worth him completing the work, even if he is this artist who is just known for this one piece. In some ways, what a hell of a piece to be known for, as you say, because it's 25 years of his life. It's an incredibly significant part of his life, isn't it? Really? So.
Absolutely, a huge chunk of it. And I totally empathise with what you're saying about his financial and the responsibilities of having a young family, because that's something I have to do, and I guess lots of people have to deal with week in, week out. Things I do, like my 11-year-old son will want to know, well, so Dad, you're going off to wherever it is, how much are you being paid? Is that worth more than taking me to football or whatever it is, that I'm supposed to be doing as a father, and having to justify that. And it is hard for something as undefinable, and as it's not like doing a piece that you spend 5 days making it and then you sell it, and that creates the finances for the next week of running a family. It doesn't have any of that to it that a lot of people expect from art, especially if you're putting that much time and effort into it.
Also, maybe one of the reasons why it's a piece that doesn't necessarily might not engage loads of people is people don't always think favourably of the M25, do they? Maybe you have to see. Maybe the M25 spin is also a slightly ironic, little cheeky comment on the M25, because it's boring, isn't it? Going round and round the M25 and getting stuck in traffic.
Well, I wouldn't find it boring. I never get bored of driving on motorways. There's always so much. Actually, it's something I've been writing this morning about different ways to drive from London to Liverpool, and or from Liverpool to London, and it always involves the M1, the M6, and the M62. So it's not different ways, different routes, but it's driving it. And one time I'll drive it, and I don't set out to do this before I start on the drive, but it becomes I'm watching out for the kestrels or the birds of prey. It becomes a whole birds of prey drive. Or another time it can be the pylons, and the whole time I'm just looking at pylons all the way. And then another time it might be dead oak trees, and another time it might be the wildflowers. Like at the moment it's all the dog daisies out. So I know if I was doing the M25, it didn't matter how many times I did the M25, there'd be another thing that I can lock into and get from it. And usually if you have music or the radio on, that stops that. And sometimes if you've got somebody with you, it's usually when I personally am driving by myself that I'll get into this thing from that kestrel, or driving up through Buckinghamshire you start seeing the red kites, or certain areas of the country you get buzzards not too far north. And the same would go for driving around the M25. Now, I've never had a conversation with Gimpo about what he's taken in from the landscape, or the different levels you take in. and maybe his mind works in a different way. But I do know why. I know for certain something like that can never get boring.
So boredom does not play a part of the M25 spin.
No. I mean, it might. You know, if you're doing something for 24 hours or 25 hours, it does pushes you, and as you get older, you can get run down easier, faster. To go back to the other thing you were mentioning, though, about people's attitude towards the M25. Now, obviously, anytime you see a sign that's telling you about, between junctions 16 and 24, there's going to be tailbacks, and you're trying to get somewhere, you're pissed off. But that can happen on any motorway. But the M25 has had more of that. I think one of the things is they built it as a 3-lane motorway, and it maybe would have been better building it as a 4-lane motorway, but then that's got to be balanced. That whole theory is the more lanes you give a motorway, the more traffic is on it, so it's always going to be clogged up. So a lot of people hate the M25 because you get clogged up on it. Gimpo chooses to do it over a weekend when it's less likely to be clogged up.
Okay, so that's a point that I hadn't necessarily noted before, but yeah, okay, so he's picked the weekend that he's picked is kind of helpful to the making of the artwork because the traffic is reduced as well. It's a kind of quieter time of the year and stuff. So okay, so that makes quite a bit of sense, really. So boredom doesn't play a part of the M25 spin, which is fine.
Maybe he gets bored, and maybe he'll say, "Oh yeah, you get bored, and that's part of it." But I actually don't think anybody gets bored.
No, I don't think he does. From what I've seen on the spin, he seems to relish kind of just the driving round and round and round, and also because he doesn't actually drive now. Tim seems to do all the driving, so Gimpo can be in the back of the van, hanging out on the sofa, as you so kind of eloquently said in your piece that you wrote about Gimpo. He's packing and unpacking and repacking and packing his bags and stuff, So he doesn't find it difficult to amuse himself with the activities that take place in the van, and also, I suppose, thinking about who might turn up each year, because it's not necessarily it's not key to the creation of the artwork. The number of people who turn up, it doesn't necessarily make it more or less successful. It's just maybe another element. To keep Gimpo amused and Tim amused every year to see who turns up and because anyone is offered to kind of contribute to the spin.
I actually met somebody. I was in Boston, in Massachusetts, not Boston Links, 2 months ago now, and I met somebody there who came on to what I was doing, who had been on one of the spins. I can't remember his name. This is not good at me, but I'm not very good at remembering people's names.
But did he speak about it in quite a positive way, or just anyway that it's kind of marked him?
Oh yeah, it's a very positive way, and yeah, it's one of the. I was going to say defining moment in his life. I'm not saying he went on that and suddenly he knew exactly what he was going to do for the rest of his life, but you knew he would be still talking about it when he was 60. This guy.
Yeah. So. No, I think that's fair enough. Do you think could Gimpo, because you went on the first spin, didn't you, Bill?
Yes.
Which was 1997, wasn't it?
If you tell me it was 1997, it was 1997.
Yeah, I think
I have got no idea.
I think that's what you have said, and it was just the three of you. Well, it was just you, Gimpo, and Dave Green who went on the spin. So you can't really remember much about the spin. That spin.
Not. I'm afraid not. I mean, I know did it. I remember places we stopped at. I remember seeing the motorway in different ways. Partly because it fading into night and then dawn coming up. But on each time round, it was different. As in the way I talked about when I do my drives to Liverpool and back or wherever and back. I usually get into a different way of seeing and engaging with the landscape and whatever's around me.
Do you think the spin has kind of changed a bit since its inception?
I've got no idea because I haven't been on it. But I like, now that I know it ends in 25 years' time, there's part of me that wants to definitely be on the last one.
Okay. Well, I would have thought if you were happy to go on the last one, that might be quite a nice way to finish it up. You were on the first one.
Yeah.
You're on the last one. You kind of you help launch the piece, and then you help close the piece, basically.
Well, I'm not saying I'm going to. I don't know if my involvement being there would be a hindrance or not, but I kind of like the idea of being part of the bookends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also, Bill, how do you think, as we were kind of saying earlier, it's quite an unwieldy work, isn't it? It's very large, and so yeah, how might it be presented when it's finished?
You're making a film. I don't know what other way something like that could be presented. If Gimpo was a natural writer, then he could write about it, but I don't think that's Gimpo's thing. But it's not like, sticking up an Angel of the North, something big and obvious, and everybody goes, wow, yeah, that's the Angel of the North, I've seen photographs of that. That's easy art. Anything big. You say it's unwieldy, you say it's big, but actually it's not visually big, and that's
no.
And most people just want something big and bold and brash, and go, oh yeah, that's that famous thing there. That's what they kind of want out of art, the mainstream, and it doesn't have that.
No, and I think that's maybe what's quite nice about it, and maybe this is the kind of slightly paradoxical nature of the spin, is that, yeah, as you've just said, it's not the way that the artwork is visual is through the video footage that Gimpo records and through the website. The performance of driving around the M25 disappears as soon as it's created, doesn't it? I can't show you that. Well, yeah. I can show you that. I can show you some footage of part of the van driving around the M25, so you can get some sense of it. But you're not presented with an overview, image of a van driving around a motorway. So that's kind of. I think that's maybe what's a kind of quite interesting thing, is that it's this huge work that's largely, it's unknown, isn't it? It's happening every year, and it's been going. It's got a bit of a history now. It's 15 years old, and still it's not really known about, is it?
But to create a human, I mean, this is actually talking about your work now. I'm not talking about Gimpo's in a sense, but to create a film for people to sit and watch something for 90 minutes. Unless it's 90 minutes of money burning, you need to have a human interest element to it, and I guess for a film to reach a wider-ish audience and to hold people's attention, it has to be, in one sense, a film about Gimpo.
Yeah, no, I
Gimpo's life and Gimpo's, from whether it was his childhood or the Falklands, or working with Zodiac Mind Warp and Jimmy and myself, just other, and I'm not saying fame by association, but just, and his children, and those are things that
I mean that's I think that's what I've felt so far anyway, and I think that's why I've bothered to sort of engage with it, because Gimpo is an interesting character, and I mean, Ian Sinclair talks about him. Ian Sinclair says he's not met Gimpo, but kind of talks about Gimpo has this slightly sort of mythical status in some ways, yes, because he's associated with you and Jimmy and what happened with the KLF and the money burning as well, and then but is not as has not had the kind of public profile necessarily that you and Jimmy have had. So when people find out about Gimpo, I mean, to start with, his name is kind of curious and stuff. Yeah. So they're like, well, who is Gimpo? What is this Gimpo character? And so I think a film about the M25 spin is a film about the artwork. It should be a film about the art, but it is also, as I think I've started to explore by, I think this repeated interview process with Gimpo, which kind of does echo the the repetitive nature of the spin,
Yeah.
is also going to allow me to get. I've interviewed him 3 times. I'm starting to get to know him as well because he's going to have to decide, or kind of has decided that he wants to let me into his life, to nose around, because it's quite it's quite invasive really to sort of to do that. So, but yeah, no, I think Gimpo is he's quite a character really, and has, as we say, and has witnessed stuff. Bill, that can always be quite an interesting perspective. That, as we know, the money burning for him. He was an observer, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was one of.
And didn't too. Jimmy was up in Gimpo.
There were 4 people there, and Jimmy, not Jimmy, sorry, Gimpo and Jim Reed were the 2 observers, weren't they? And Gimpo filmed this pretty unique art event, and then has gone on to do the M25 spin, which again I think you'd say is a fairly unique art project, really. So yeah, do you think does the spin hold more artistic merit, having the position it does outside the established art world? It's.
I wouldn't know what gives something artistic merit. I'm not. I'm driven to do what I do. I can't say what I do. I mean, you get an instinctive thing that something has depth, something has meaning, but you can't actually put words on it. You can't, or it's very hard to. I'm not really answering your question. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
And we were talking before we were talking about the exit through the gift shop before we did this film. And one of the things in Exit Through the Gift Shop is the artist who does the face of the Mexican wrestler. I can't remember what it's called, but you see it everywhere. And that artist was talking, the guy who was doing it was talking, saying, well, it doesn't mean anything, it never did, but somehow it's taken on meaning by doing it loads and loads and loads of times.
Shepherd Fairy.
That's
the Obey, the black and
the
white.
Obey, Obey one.
Okay.
Now, I was kind of arguing against that while I was watching, thinking, well, no, it doesn't. Just because you've done it loads and loads of times, just because loads of people recognise it, actually, it doesn't really give it any more weight. It doesn't actually mean, it just means we've seen it loads of times. So like the Nike swoosh, or it's just because a brand is repeated and repeated and repeated, and it gains a sort of infamy, doesn't give it. So there is part of me that could be thinking, well, just because just because Gimpo has done this 25 times or however many times, doesn't mean this gives it more weight. In the same way as just because an art piece is done huge, that it gives it any more weight. So I've got that part of my brain going that's sort of tugging at this and not pulling it apart, but just exploring it or deconstructing it. But at the same time, I instinctively know it is great. It is a great piece, and part of that piece is done. It's continually done over a number of years.
Yeah, because as we know, it's all well and good, and it's nice for the creator of a piece of work to be acknowledged by, the
Peer group.
The peer group. But, that is nice, and if there's some financial reward that comes from that, that's kind of good as well. But also, there is something to be said, and certainly something is added into the situation that it's taking part in the realms of the M25 spin. It's adding something to the contemporary modern art world, and also Bill, I suppose because it's happening over such a long period, it can be. It's being it's being worked on, and it can be worked on for a large number of years and time, and so many adjustments can be kind of made along the way within the framework. The framework is very clear for the artwork, isn't it? It's driving around the M25, it's recording as much footage as you physically can with the camera, and it's putting stuff up to the website. So he's got those three, and then you could, as we've discussed earlier, you maybe could then add in, and how do I try and maybe attract some people to come and join me on the spin as well? So there's maybe 4 constraints within the work to work with, and so that's the kind of the guide to kind of see where we go with it. And because as one little thing that's happened, I kind of joined in 2009, and so at times once a year or as often as I want to with Gimpo, I can sort of go and say hello to him and give him some pokes and stuff about, well, you could do this, or just talking about it in whatever way, just kind of continues to get the work out there. And this, what I'm doing, is quite closely involved with the spin anyway. I mean, after today, I feel I've kind of interviewed the 3, what you might say, main protagonists in the work. You launched it, you helped kind of launch it, announce it with Gimpo. Ian Sinclair has written about it in his London Orbital book. So it's already quite nicely recorded, or put into place, isn't it?
And what do you think you bring to it?
Only simple commentary in many ways. Part of me is a documentary filmmaker, an independent documentary filmmaker who has found various subjects along the years that have appealed to me, like the mod subculture, London, dance music, Banksy, and more recent. This is one of my more recent things, Gimpo and the M25 spin. So I'm observing of what's going on with.
But what attracted to you to right at the beginning? You said you got it. Your first thing you knew about it was on some video you bought off eBay.
Yeah.
And you saw this thing. What did you think?
What did I think of the footage? What did I?
The footage, just the idea. Okay, you mentioned. Okay, I'm going to cut him some. You mentioned mod subculture. Now, obviously, you're not of an age to have been involved in mod first time round, and I'm hardly, but I was very aware of it as it was happening, and so the drive to Brighton or the drive to Margate. Now there was a destination there, but there's a similar thing that getting on your scooter and just heading. I remember at school, it's just not at school. There's a poem about a motorcyclist in the States just driving and driving. And I think he's driving on the Salt Lake Flats, and he's going to die, but it's just that drive into death. And I don't know when this poem was written. I guess maybe early 50s or something.
Yeah, no, I mean it's as you've said, or as we're tossing around, it is kind of slightly difficult to quantify why we're drawn to it. And I mean, in some ways, I'm drawn to the M25 spin because there's something iconic about the M25, that it goes round and round and round, and if it wasn't the first of that kind of motorway, it certainly was one of the first for England. Yeah. And it may also be a victim of its own success kind of thing. That's why people don't like it very much, because it's so used by motorists basically. So there's obviously that, and then obviously also because I'm interested in what happened to all that money as well, and Gimpo was somebody who was there, and so that was, for me, that was some kind of access to sort of try and talk to Gimpo about what happened there, because I understand at times you don't always want to talk about that lots, because also, as we know with all this kind of stuff, at times if you don't talk about things like that, or what you get up to as well, you build myth, and you know, there's kind of mystery around what you make, which is a big part of the art world, and certainly at times with somebody like Banksy, who is not that known. So there's all that kind of there's all those kind of reasons of why it interested me, and why it would continue to possibly interest people, that Gimpo is a slightly, as Ian summed up, a bit of a mythical character, a bit of, if you've never met him, you find out about him and you're kind of like, well, who is he exactly, and what does he do, or did he do in relation to Bill Drummond and Jimmy Coulty and the KLF, because he seems to have been quite mentioned, and you know, you do nice little things with Gimpo, you know, painting the Gimpo painting, and that track by Black Smoke, isn't it? It's Gimpo. It's like, that's a celebration of Gimpo, isn't it?
That wasn't. There was a thing before. It wasn't Black Smoke thing. Was it, Mark Manning and I did a track called Gimpo by Gimpo, which got sampled. Jimmy sampled.
Right.
For Black Smoke.
Okay.
I think. So there's a whole track by Gimpo. Don't you know that track? No.
I know. Gimpo. But then there's that. But the original. It sounds like it's been sampled and changed then.
So if you know it by Black Smoke.
Black Smoke being
Jimmy's thing that Jimmy was, or went on after Jimmy, but it was a track that originally was a track that Mark Manning and I wrote for Gimpo. Okay. So if you were to put in Gimpo by Gimpo, I think that's what it's called.
So in some ways, Bill, is it fair to say, is Gimpo a bit of a creation of yours?
Not really. Well, not really. No. That said, I know he was given the name by Mark Manning.
Okay.
That's where the name came from. Okay. And I think it helped give. You know, Gimpo is his own person. He has his own personality. It's a very driven. It's a very strong personality. But I think, when he got the name Gimpo, it gave him an identity, and suddenly he latched onto that identity. No, that's good. It's a great name. It's a great name to have. And then, I think with the money burning thing, when Jimmy handed him the camera and said, "Okay, film whatever we're going to do," and he did, that gave him another something.
Yeah, because there were in that other documentary about the KLF.
Documentary about the KLF?
Yeah, the omnibus one from the.
I think that was about the K Foundation, actually.
Sorry. It encompassed the KLF, and then anyway, yeah. But yeah, no, it's fair to say, Bill, it was centred more on how you moved into the art world and so on and so forth. But yeah, no, and as you've just said, so when Gimpo was given this identity, and then in that documentary, that certainly played out, because you see Gimpo, correct me if I'm wrong, working quite closely with you about what should be done with that film, with the money burning. You talk about whether you and Jimmy want to present yourselves as filmmakers, and you kind of say that you don't because you're not filmmakers, and you encourage Gimpo to, he was the filmmaker of Watch the K Foundation Burn £1 million. So all I'm saying, or all that can be said about, if Gimpo's not a creation of yours, you've certainly, I would have thought it's fair to say, isn't it, encouraged Gimpo to do what he does, and to sort of be what he is.
I think so. Whether we've set out to do that or not, I think we have. But I guess that's the same for anybody, and everybody that gets involved, whether it's ending up being a sportsman or whatever it is. There's been certain things that happen that go, oh yeah, okay, I could go this way, or I could go.
No, and it's And it's just it's those situations are nice. It's healthy, isn't it? And
But I wouldn't ever claim to be some sort of Machiavellian, not Machiavellian, puppet master at all.
no,
In any way.
no, that's fair enough. Rob, how long have we done?
We are on 40 minutes.
Okay, we'll just try trucking on for a little bit longer. But
Yeah.
are you all right with that, Bill?
What's the time now?
It is 20 to 3.
Yeah, I better not go on for too much longer.
No. I'm only the maximum we'd do would be an hour. We'd fill the tape basically,
Okay,
so it's another 20 minutes if we can get it out of each other. Right. Anyway, where's the Gimpo painting?
It'd be my workshop in Norwich.
Okay. So it's not been on public display for quite a long time.
No, and I'm saying that slightly vaguely because the way I work is I'm supposed to only have 25 canvases, and those canvases get painted over and over and over.
25.
Yeah.
There's a nice
Okay.
number.
And I don't know if and it's not one of the current 25. Now, in actual fact, I've got a bit more than 25, and it never really fitted the way my paintings work, which are all landscape, because that was done portrait, I think.
Yeah.
Gimpo.
Yeah.
And so maybe that stood outside of that, but all of the paintings are all exactly the same size, exactly the same. They're all black, white, and all the three primaries. But it may have been painted over. Lots of my things, I'll do them, and they have a function, and that function may be for once only, that gets painted over. And for me, I like the idea that there's these layers over the years of something.
Okay. So it's so in some ways, one way you can see the Gimpo painting is that YouTube clip of you reading your nice summing up of Gimpo's M25 spin. Gimpo spin, I think it is. Okay, so there's no Gimpo painting.
No, there may be.
There may be.
But I wouldn't know. I'd have to go through my rack.
Okay, right, that's fine. That's fine. Can you kind of sum up what the spin says about England, and do you think it's not really possible for this kind of art to be made anywhere else in the world?
I don't know. I definitely can't answer the second part of the question because I'm not from anywhere else in the world.
Okay.
What it says about it does seem to be a celebration of our times, or the times we've gone through, or the celebration of the, You see, I guess by the time he's ended, by the 25 years is up, the idea of the M25 will be quite a dull idea, but there was a time when it seemed an incredibly exciting thing. The M25 was, because I've always had this thing about the M62 motorway, and I still have, and there's different motorways I got relationships with. I can't really explain it.
No, that's all right. Well, the thing, as you say, the M25 is from a certain time, and in some ways, if this is just a characteristic of the M25 spin, that maybe as it is now, and as it may well continue to do so, it becomes more and more sort of outdated as the work continues, because, and it's not, the M25 spin didn't start in the, say, heyday of the M25, but it completely harks back to and evokes rave culture and the 80s and that kind of time. So maybe when the piece is finished, or as much as we can say now, it basically, it evokes that time of in England, doesn't it? Really, and
it does, yeah, okay. The whole idea of the orbital rave, people desperately going out trying to find where's the rave, waiting to get the phone call. Actually, it was before we had mobiles, really, or not many of us had mobiles, and that searching and almost that aimlessly driving, looking for where the rave is, which is a lot of people experienced in the late 80s or early 90s.
And also, as Ian Sinclair said in London Orbital, the opening of the motorway was kind of shrouded in a bit of secrecy as well. Thatcher kind of turned up and cut the rope and then disappeared off, and as Ian Sinclair explored through his book and the film, what goes on and has gone on around the M25 is huge and varied, from Bram Stoker's Dracula to J.G. Ballard in the West. So it's a road, if you want to find out about it, that kind of evokes lots of things of England, but also maybe certainly locally to London. It's kind of the fringes of London, isn't it, as well? There's lots of it that's just kind of warehouses and industrial parks and stuff. I mean, you walked round some of it with Ian Sinclair, didn't you? So
It did, but actually I thought his walk was going to be actually on the M25, but it obviously isn't. These footpaths that sort of go all the way around it. And the other thing was mental hospitals. Mental hospitals on the outside of major cities. So that was another one of his things. Mental hospitals around London, and they are sort of almost linked by the M25.
So in some way, Gimpo, even if he's not, maybe he may not be that aware of that kind of stuff that's around the M25, but if you kind of explore what the M25 is, Gimpo is at times, he is just touching on all that as he drives round, many times really. So there's kind of that, I guess, as well, coming out of the work. So anyway, a little bit back to, do you feel that the spin, when it's finished, it could be, maybe one good way of presenting it would be the video footage should be presented in some kind of way? I mean, Gimpo has shown complete laps, I think, at like the Portobello Film Festival, so you can kind of go and do a virtual lap if you want to do that, so you don't necessarily have to go on the spin. But I don't know, when it finishes, could you have a kind of typical gallery space, white walls or something, with the video footage shown in its entirety, or that kind of thing? Or
I've got, because I operate near enough completely outside of the studio, the gallery system, or the gallery. I would have no idea how that should be presented within the traditional contemporary world. And because I'm not part of that world, I'm not likely to become part of that world. I get on with what I'm getting on with, and I'd have I can't say I'd have any worthwhile advice to give Gimpo to what he should be doing with it, or you with your film,
Or sorry, Bill. Or in some ways, maybe it's just, it would be nice that, maybe what you're saying is that the spin as it continues and then is finally presented, presents itself within the world that it's in. Maybe you're kind of saying, it's not a piece for the contemporary, the established contemporary art world, and so Gimpo will find a way of presenting it, nicely within the world that it exists in, which is it's next to, or it's part of your world as well, isn't it?
I don't know. I mean, because I don't really relate to what Jimmy and I were doing together. It seems so distant. I don't think about it ever. I mean, I have to think about it from time to time because somebody will ask me about it. But I'm just so focused on what I'm doing right now, and that's the way I usually work. This isn't answering your question. It may be that in 20 years' time, they'll be showing it in Tate Modern, you know, big screen. It may become this other thing, and as much as I like before we were doing this interview, I was talking about it's classic ways to break a career, to make an artist appeal to a huge amount of people, but usually that artwork has to tick a number of boxes, and those boxes are that it's dealing with celebrity, it's dealing with something that's already famous, or it's dealing with sex, violence, death, money. Those are the things that trigger people's emotions, whether the Sun readers are reading the highest brow art magazines. Those are the things that time and time again trigger and make an audience for something. Now, I know that most of what I do doesn't do those things, and I know I stay away from those things. I don't borrow. I don't want fame by association. So it means that it almost by the way that work means what I do can never have a big audience, and in a sense, I can't see the M25 thing ever, particularly however it's presented, having a big audience. Does that matter? I don't know. It'd be nice for Gimpo if a lot of people were to applaud him for what he's done, and that it somehow earned money for him. But if the fame by association is that he was involved with Jimmy and myself, we're not famous in the mainstream sort of way. We have a place in people's imaginations for people of a certain generation, certain tight demographics, who were of an age when what we were doing was relevant to them. But and that's not going to particularly work for him.
No, and I think I wasn't necessarily really saying that. It's just I think it's just fair to say that's just one of the characteristics, or what you might find out about, or what you would find out about Gimpo and the M25 spin if you kind of found the work and then kind of nosed around and stuff. It wouldn't take you that long to go, oh, okay, right, so Gimpo worked.
It links in with that.
Yeah, he worked with Bill and Jimmy back in the late 80s and into the 90s and stuff like that, and that's kind of interesting and stuff. But yeah, no, Bill, that's not necessarily going to drive lots of success. As you said, it's kind of it will keep an amount of interest for as we know, kind of like people my age and stuff like that who were younger and in your formative kind of years, in your late teens and stuff, when as we're saying, the M25 was doing what it was doing, being introduced to the world, and the rave culture was announcing itself. So it was all kind of very fresh and new, and as we know, every generation has their example of this. 68, 88, it's kind of, and in some ways you and I are kind of, we might be able to engage with what's going on in a contemporary way, but not in the same way. Not in the same way when I was 18 and you were.
Whenever I was 18, whatever it was for me.
Or when you were, with the KLF and stuff, you're in your late 30s and stuff like that. You were engaging with that particular contemporary stuff that was going on in the way that you were with the KLF, and that was your experience of that time period, and we are not there now.
No,
we're a long way down the line from there, aren't we?
And I guess if Jimmy and I were Andy Warhol or somebody who'd reached that kind of mega status, then I guess people that have worked with Andy Warhol then have a. Well, we're not in that, we were never going to be. We were never wanted to be in that sort of thing. But that's a different conversation.
Yes, no, that's fine. Where's Rob?
Yeah. 54 minutes.
Right, we've done pretty well, haven't we, really? I've kind of... Why do you think Gimpo does the M25 spin? What do you remember about the spin? Not a lot. Can you say what you dislike and like about the M25?
I dislike it when I see that notice telling me there's going to be a tailback, you know, and I'm trying to get somewhere and I've got a certain amount of time to get there. What I like about it is when I think, oh, imagine we didn't have the M25, and you're driving down from North, and you got to get to Dover or Brighton, and you got to drive through London, or get on the North Circular. You know, it must have been hell before we had the M25.
Yeah, this is true. And we've kind of summed up. Do you think it's difficult to describe the M25 spin because it's still a work in progress? We kind of toyed with that, didn't we?
Yeah.
Could Gimpo persuade you to go on the spin again?
Well, I said I wouldn't mind going on the last one.
Yeah, that'd be good. Have you read Ian Sinclair's book London Orbital?
I guess it must have been there. I will have done.
But you can't really describe any differences or similarities between Ian's book and the M25.
No. Well, Ian comes from a completely different. Ian comes from, in one sense, highly intellectual, wordplay way of viewing things. And he doesn't. Yet Gimpo comes from a far more visceral, far more way.
What might you like to see happen to the M25?
The actual road or what Gimpo's doing?
Yeah.
I've got no, we need it.
We need it. Okay.
Yeah.
Does the spin hold more artistic merit? We kind of did that, didn't we? And we've discussed the splitting of the spin into its different component parts, didn't we? The website, the video, and the performance. We've tossed around how the spin should be presented. Mm-hmm. Has the spin changed since it began? We kind of tooled with that a bit. The Gimpo painting, and we discussed boredom quite a lot, and the fact that most probably doesn't exist in the M25.
For me, it doesn't. For me, it doesn't. It maybe does for Gimpo, maybe does for other people, but I don't know what boredom's like.
You don't know what boredom's like? That's good. And can you sum up who and what Gimpo is?
No.
We tried to. And what does the spin say about England? We kind of did that, didn't we? And then the whole thing about, is it not really possible for this art to be made anywhere else? We kind of dealt with that. So I think we're pretty good, aren't we? Where we are now?
That's 57, coming up on 58 minutes.
Thanks.
That's a pretty good chunk.
Sorry I wasn't able to give you more
No.
definite answers.
No,
you know?
but there's no definite answers to this stuff,
know?
is there? That's the thing. There's no definite answers, and that's all right.
Do you want me to stop this before you...